Good morning, dear students. I welcome you all to English class, and today's topic is the second chapter from your literature part, 2 It is written by Leo Tolstoy. His full name is Count Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy, and he is famously known as Count Leo Tolstoy. Here is his picture. He is a Russian writer. Okay, to know more about him, his era is between 1828 to 1920. He was born on 9th September 1828 and his burial was on 20th November 1920. To know more about him, how was his genre? What fields did he choose to write this? He was a realistic fiction. He was master in realistic fiction. That is, all the real incidents went across him like war and the ruling, the kingdom, the administration, what all he observes in his real life, he would narrate it in the form of fiction. He was very famous in it and he had mastered in it. He was master in realistic fiction. He was bit skeptical. What do you mean by skeptical? Someone who questions always. Someone who is a social reformer who tries to question the activities of the society. So he was one amongst them. He was a very famous philosopher who was bit skeptical. He was also dogmatic. What do you mean by dogmatic? The person who doesn't consider other people's decision or the conversation. There is no freedom for other people to put their comments to his saying. He was very straight with his comment and he felt that whatever he thought was very real. He used to narrate it in the form of fiction in his stories. Let us know more about him. He is also famous for his quotes which brings you the essence of life. So his quotes were very famous with the life aspects. As I have told you, he is considered to be the master of realistic fiction. His best known novels are Anna Karenina and War and Peace. See, they both are very long novels which were based on the war and the incidents which took around war. He had extreme moralistic and aesthetic views. He also, in the later part of his writing, and once he became scholar, his interest went on towards the politics, and in and going of the politics, he also started to become an activist. He became a social activist. He also had become a philosopher, and of course he is a novelist. So this is about the Russian writer Count Leo Tolstoy, who is famously known as Leo Tolstoy. Now let us move on to the topic 2 See, the title is a humorous, sarcastic title. Okay, and what is the meaning of the title? We shall know and tell about this in the last segment. So let us start with the story narration. What is this story dealing all about? This is about, let us begin the story with the introduction of this small place. It is a small country in the Europe continent and the name of the country is Monaco. You can have a look at it. This is the Europe continent and here somewhere lies our Monaco. Yes, this is where Monaco is. See, this place is Monaco and the Monaco shares its border with France and Italy, and it lies on the shore of Mediterranean Sea. Okay, Monaco is a small kingdom, very small kingdom which lies on the borders of Mediterranean Sea and shares its border with France and Italy. Fine. See, this is where it shares its border with France and here below it is Italy. So this is how the Monaco kingdom lies. This is where the Monaco kingdom lies. And this is very small kingdom. See, the total land area of Monaco kingdom is equivalent to one of the place in Bangalore. You can consider it to be a Koramangala. The land area of Koramangala is equivalent to the country or the kingdom Monaco. Fine. And the inhabitants, total inhabitants of this country, see, this is the small country Monaco. This is how the kingdom is. Then the inhabitants, total inhabitants of the country are of 7,000 people. Only 7,000 people lived by then when this story or the fiction was written. But now if you see the internet and browse what is the total population of Monaco, we would get according to 2015 census, the census says that the total population is around 38,000. Even now the population is multiplied by 5 times, that's all. So the population of that kingdom is very less. Earlier when the story was written, what was the population of the country? It was just 7,000 people, 7,000 inhabitants. And they are giving you the explanation in the textbook that if you divide the land area into each of the citizens, 7,000 people of the country, the land, everybody would not get an acre of land. So the land is not being distributed, or it cannot be distributed even an acre for each citizen. It is said that if at all the land area is divided amongst 7,000 inhabitants, each inhabitant would not even get an acre of land. That small was the kingdom Monaco, and hence it was named, or it was called as Toy Kingdom. Why was it called as Toy Kingdom? Because the land area was also small and the inhabitants also were very less. So this is about Monaco and its inhabitants. Even though it was small in area or the inhabitants were very less, still this kingdom had proper kinglet, proper ruling, administration, courtiers, everything was there. So look at this, this Monaco had a proper kinglet to rule, and this Monaco also had a proper palace and court, ministers were there, bishop was there. Bishop is the head of the Christian community. Now that person who is head of the Christian community is considered to be bishop, and it also had army. Okay, it had its own army. Never a large army or a very huge army. Its army consisted of only 60 members. Okay, only 60 men were there in the army. And it also had general, the one who would take care of the people in the army, the chief of the army. So even though the kingdom was small, it was never different from the other kingdoms. This kingdom had a king, had a proper palace, had ministers and courtiers, had general, had a bishop, had also the army, and the army consisted of 60 men. Okay, and next is how the revenue would be collected, how the administration of the kingdom would go on. This kingdom had or led its administration by collecting tax. Okay, and what all were the commodities on which they used to collect taxes? They used to collect tax on tobacco. So the kingdom, whoever were using tobacco, had to pay tax. They were levying tax on wine and spirits. So any kind of spirit, if people are consuming, then they had to pay tax on it. And even the tax was collected by the source or by the means of poll tax. What is this poll tax? Here you can see the receipt of the poll tax. This is some amount. It can be a small amount or a heavy amount which is levied on every citizen. Every citizen, you may not say that the children below certain age is not to be considered, or the people or the citizen above 60 are not to be considered. Every citizen means including the tiny baby, the infant, from infant to the age old person who is alive, had to pay some amount which would be registered by the kingdom chief or the king, and he had to pay it regularly. This amount is considered to be poll tax. As you are citizen of Monaco, you had to pay this amount as the tax. So these were the four areas from which the king used to collect the tax: poll tax, wine and spirits, and tobacco. Okay, and even though he used to collect tax from these areas, the amount which he collected was not enough for his ruling, his kingdom, to pay his courtiers, to pay his administrators, and for himself to live a luxurious life like a king. Okay, and so what did he do? He found an alternative source of revenue. What was his alternative source of revenue? The alternative source of revenue from which the king drew money or raked money was this gaming house. Okay, he had introduced a new gaming house into the kingdom, and in this gaming house people were allowed to play roulette, the gambling game roulette. Okay, and when people were allowed to play roulette in this gaming house, the amount or the revenue or the money drew there to the kingdom in a huge amount. The king was able to rake money in a huge amount. Why? Because Monaco had its monopoly over this gaming house. Why does this gaming house and Monaco had monopoly? Because many other countries such as Germany and other European countries had banned this roulette game or gaming house or gambling house in their countries. Why did they do so? They did this because people would rake money. Okay, they would play with a huge amount of money, their friends' money. They would loan the amount from other people. They would loan the amount from the family. They would torture the family and get the amount by force. And here they would rake money. Once they lose the amount, they are not questionable. So they would go down into depression. And in that despair, people were shooting themselves and they were committing suicide. Okay, and this was the reason many countries like Germany and other European countries had forbade it, and hence Monaco had monopoly over this gambling house or gaming house. So wherever from nearby, all the other European countries did not have this gaming house in the kingdom. Only Monaco had this gaming house in its kingdom. Now all the people, whoever wanted to play the game, would come down to Monaco and they would play the game here, take their money. If they win or lose, they used to pay the gaming house keeper, and that keeper would pay certain amount of interest to king, and this is how the king used to get his amount. And this was a kind of tax which he used to collect from the gaming house keeper, and hence he used to earn a lot of money. And finally in the statement he says that you cannot earn a very huge palace by your hard work. This is a proverb. The proverb is like this: you can't earn stone palace by a honest labor. That means, see, even if you work hard and then earn money and then you try to build your own house, you cannot just build the palace of gems and you can't lead a luxurious life. So king knew this. According to the proverb, the king knew this, that he cannot earn a lot of amount by collecting a simple amount or simple way of tax. And he also knew that collecting tax on tobacco and wine and spirit also is wrong. It is not a right path to ask the citizen of the country to go and use tobacco and consume wine and spirit. That is also wrong. If that is wrong, he was okay with doing or introducing this gaming house into the country. For some years there were no problem. Everything went on smoothly, and the king also started enjoying a luxurious life. So what all did he do once he became wealthy enough? He constructed leaves near the borders. See, I said in the beginning that Monaco had shared its borders with the Mediterranean Sea. So he had constructed the leaves. Leaves are those banks which is in the borders to make the kingdom strong, or to make the borders strong, so that the enemy would not enter, or a kind of hurricane or a tsunami would not enter. People would build these leaves and make the banks very strong. So when he had enough money, he built the leaves. Okay, and he also had his coronation. You can see here in the picture what is coronation is: getting throned himself. He was a kinglet. He was the heir or the successor of the king. As Monaco also had a monarchical ruling, he was the successor of the king. And here he got coronated. That is, there was a grand ceremony which every inhabitant of Monaco enjoyed, and he was throned as a king. Now once he became a proper king, he had all his arrangement. He led the proper court, proper jury, all the prosecutions, everything, everyone were there in his court. So now he started leading a proper life, a luxurious life and proper administration. Only difference was other kingdom were huge and this was in a small number. Everything was there but in a very small number. Okay. Now next is, after some days, what happened? Some years, after a few months or a year, there was a murder committed. So someone had killed a person and the criminal was also arrested. Now the court had the criminal and all the jury members and the ministers, everyone came together in the court and they discussed, they argued. Finally, they came out with a discussion and with the verdict that the criminal has to be executed. What is the form of execution they wanted to do? They wanted the criminal's head to be cut off. Okay, why do I say this execution is, in the Monaco, when the monarchical ruling was there was a system of capital punishment. What is this capital punishment is? Any mistake you do, the king had the right to give a death sentence, or the jury members had the right to give a death sentence. This is how the capital punishment was going on in Monaco and most of the European countries. I will tell you, this capital punishment system was followed there till 1847. Okay, in 1847 the last execution had taken place in Monaco. And recently they all abolished such capital punishment and then now a proper jury is there which is taking care of the jurisdiction. This capital punishment had given the criminal the death sentence of execution, and the execution was in the form of cutting down his head off. So the criminal was caught and he was executed and he had he got a punishment to get his head cut off. Now to do this, they wanted the instrument. Okay, this instrument to cut a man's head off, you need either an executioner, a person who has the guts to go and behead a man. So that person who beheads a man is an executioner, or you need a guillotine machine. This is a guillotine machine. This is a picture of guillotine machine which was used in French Revolution. If you know French Revolution, people were tortured and killed using this guillotine machine. So this is a form of a guillotine machine. See, this is the axe and here the person would keep his neck and the axe would fall down. So we need they needed, that is Monaco kingdom needed either an executioner or a guillotine machine. But there was a problem. See, that was a very peace-loving kingdom. First of all, the kingdom was very small and there were no thieves or such murders committed earlier. It was a very peace-loving kingdom. There were no jails, no prison, there were no such machines or instruments or tools to be used. Now, there was a hitch that when they did not have all this, how would they behead a man? This was a big question there. So now the king said, if at all, yes, if you want the person to be executed, you just execute him. The king gave the order. But then they found that there were no executioner nor they had a guillotine machine. Now what did they do? They wanted the generals or the army members to help out the king in taking out this death sentence. When the news or when the general was called and questioned, the general said that, fine, I can help. I can go and ask my soldiers, army members, soldiers were there, 60 men. I will go and ask them, and if they say yes, I will come back and inform you whether anybody could come and execute this criminal. Okay, then the news was also spread around. The general went to the soldiers and soldiers were questioned. Soldiers answered that they have been trained to kill the people in the warfare, but they have not been trained to execute a criminal or to execute a man using a guillotine machine or an axe like that. So this was the way the soldiers answered the general. Now the hitch was, how did they solve the problem? How to come out of this problem we will discuss in the next class. Let me stop the story till here and I will discuss it in the next class, that how did they overcome with this problem, what was the alternative arrangement did they do. Okay, so let me stop here, I will continue it in the next class.